Welcome to We've Got No Video. Um, what's going on with my video? Just bear with me 1 second. What is going on here? I'm going back to Windows 10 after this. Windows 11 is just getting on my nerves with stupid things. The first thing we're going to take a look at, if it opens, is this article on Bleeping Computer. So, new regression OpenSSH remote code execution bug gives root on Linux servers. Why am I not working? So Max saying it's nice and cold here in England again. It's always cold here in England. We've got Richard with us. Oh, 30 degrees. So, I'm really not sure what's going on here. What is going on with this? Why are we not going over a video? So, this is the beauty of doing things live. Why are you not working, Come configure video. Nothing in there. This is just stupid. Oh, there we go. Are we back? No. Let me change this to thought. Okay. We're cool. We seem to be in a really low resolution on my camera. Kind of stretch this. There we go. We're getting there slowly but surely. Right, okay, I'm on the screen. My camera's decided not to record in 4K. I'm doing this in 1920 anyway, so it doesn't matter. We'll lock that again so I don't mess with it. Oh, Mac, I've had enough moving to Spain. Yeah, it's the weather's not particularly clever over here. On the bright side, my camera might hold out. Since it's not very hot. So, what's this SSH bug that gives root on Linux servers? So, this is reported on Bleeping Computer. A new OpenSSH unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability dubbed regression gives root privileges on glibc-based Linux systems. So, is the world falling? We'll dive into this and have a look what it's about. So, OpenSSH is a suite of networking utilities based on secure shell SSH protocol, and it's extensively used for secure remote login, remote server management and administration, file transfers using SCP and SFTP. So the flaw was discovered by researchers at Qualys in May 2024, and it's been assigned the CVE identifier of 2024-6387, and it's due to the race condition in SSH daemon that allows unauthenticated remote attackers to execute code as root. So that sounds pretty bad. This has not got the full details on here, but if a client does not authenticate within login grace time, 120 seconds set as default, then SSHD's SIG alarm handler is called synchronously and calls various functions that are not async signal safe. So, yes, this sounds pretty bad. So it impacts OpenSSH servers running on Linux from version 8.5p1 up to, but not including 9.8p1. I can't see the CVE score on this. Where is it? So scans from Shodan and Census reveal over 14 million internet-exposed OpenSSH servers, but confirmed a vulnerable status for 700,000 instances. Let's dive into this a little bit. What have we got? Where is it? Let me pull Obsidian up a second. So, Splunk have done a pretty good write-up on this. You know, so Splunk research teams like dissecting the technical details regarding 2024-6387. So, key points. The vulnerability for remote code execution affects OpenSSH 8.5p1 to 9.8p1. Now, the primary architecture for this is 32-bit. Theoretically, it is possible on 64-bit as well. So systems using glibc-based Linux distributions, and the impact is root-level access if exploited. But it's the complexity is high and requires precise timing with multiple attempts. And there's let's say 9.8p1 OpenSSH. So we've mentioned it's a race condition. The flaw, a regression of an older vulnerability, so from 2006, so CVE 2006-5051. Allows remote attackers to execute code as root, leading to a full system compromise. So if you're running any systems and you've got them SSH ports exposed, this is going to be for you. So there is a few details in it. So on average, it takes about 10,000 attempts to win the race condition, which will either lead to remote code execution or just crashing the service. So to give an idea, with 100 connections, max startups accepted every 120 seconds, the login grace time, it takes approximately 3 to 4 hours to win a race condition. Now, if you factor in ASLR, which is the address space layout randomization bypassing, a full exploit could take 6 to 8 hours on average to obtain a remote shell. There are, obviously, the best thing you can do is make sure all your Linux systems are up to date. So the timing is crucial because the exploit must interrupt specific operations at just the right moment to manipulate the system's memory state. Under OS and architecture, the proof of concept targets 32-bit x86 systems. They'll work on a 64-bit AMD version was in progress. It's been tested on Debian-based systems. The 32-bit exploits weaknesses in ASLR implementation, making it easy to guess memory addresses. A 64-bit version would be more challenging due to stronger ASLR, but was considered feasible by the researchers. So, as usual, I'll leave the links in the description when the video's over to my forum, where you can pull all the links up that are discussed in today's stream. So, the function is similar to setting up a complicated domino pattern. It arranges the computer's memory, the heap, in a very specific way, creating the perfect conditions for the exploit to work. So first it creates 10 small memory chunks and immediately frees them. So this is like placing 10 small dominoes at the start of the pattern. So it creates 27 pairs of memory chunks, one large about 8K and one small 320K. So there's an example of the prepare heap function here. So the actual details are, it prepares a specially crafted packet of data. It sends all but the last byte of this packet to the server, and this is like getting the ball ready to roll in the scenario they're using with dominoes. It'll wait for a very precise moment, just 1 millisecond before the server is expected to time out, raising the SIG alarm. And at that exact moment, it sends a final byte of the packet. This is like releasing the ball to knock over the dominoes. Finally, it checks if the exploit was successful by looking at the server's response. How do we protect against it? Update OpenSSH to 9.8p1. So there's a few tools on GitHub that you can use, and they are linked here, which you can use to scan your servers. You give an IP address, a range of IP addresses, and it will scan through and tell you if they're vulnerable or not. We can see, here's a screenshot of one such tool, where they scan and it says vulnerable SSH version. Mitigation strategies. Excuse me. So as mentioned, the first one, update OpenSSH to 9.8p1 or later, which includes a fix. It is in, I think it's FreeBSD 13.3. The latest version fixes this for FreeBSD. If patching is not immediately possible, implement the following mitigations to limit exposure. So limit SSH access to necessary IP addresses and networks using firewall rules. 1 second. Excuse me. So if you're running Linux servers, you don't want to be just exposing SSH anyway. I know it's supposed to be secure by default, but you can restrict what IP addresses can connect to that SSH instance, and that's one way around it. Another way is similar, use jump hosts or bastion servers. So you'd whitelist them to be able to connect to your SSH servers. Now deploy host-based packages like fail to ban to identify and block potential exploitation attempts. Configure fail to ban to monitor SSH logs and automatically block IP addresses showing specific behaviors. If you're not familiar with fail to ban, it will just monitor the logs, and if somebody enters an incorrect username and password, then you can set it to, if it's 3 times in 5 minutes, then to block them for 10 minutes. If they're repeat offenders, you can block for 20, and if repeat offend again, 40, and just keep increasing the time. So if you can't patch, you want to set some sensible limits on fail to ban. With more than 6 attempts in an hour, block the addresses. So your SSH deconfig, which the file that's used to configure the SSH DNS. Set the login grace time to 0 to avoid the vulnerability. This can potentially tie up system resources as it removes the timeout for authentication attempts. Max startups. Reduce the max startups parameter to limit the number of unauthenticated connections. Setting this too low may block legitimate users. If you're not SSHing in too much, then it's not going to cause you too much of a problem. And it's got an example here. Set your max startups to 10, 30, 100. So start refusing connections at 10. Refuse 30% of connections when there are 10 to 100 unauthenticated clients. Depending on how much SSH traffic you have, you can set that a lot lower. The per source max startups. So set this to a small number to limit concurrent unauthenticated connections from a single source IP. And this is applied to max startups using whichever limit is lower. So per source max startups 5, for example. We've discussed implement network segmentation, so just deny access to the SSH servers from untrusted IP addresses. Implement MFA is another option, and obviously monitor and alerting. So you're going to be wanting to monitor your SSH. So this is where it says 14 million. Where is it? Was that the previous article? So this is where it states that 14 million SSH servers have been detected on the internet by Sheridan, but they're not all vulnerable due to the fact that obviously running fail to ban will help mitigate this for you. Full notes to all this I'll leave below, but this was like one of the best write-ups that I could find on it, including mitigation, and that was on Splunk. Right, moving on. It wouldn't be a stream without mentioning WordPress, would it? So WordPress itself, these are not plugins. WordPress releases an urgent security update to patch cross-site scripting and path traversal flaws. which is WordPress 6.5.5. So if you're running any WordPress sites, you're going to want to make sure that you're running at least that version. And the 6.5.5 update addresses 3 vulnerabilities: the cross-site scripting vulnerability in the HTML API, cross-site scripting vulnerability in the template part block, and path traversal issue on Windows hosted sites. Okay. I wouldn't recommend hosting WordPress on Windows anyway, or connecting Windows to the internet if you can help it. So if you are running WordPress, check for the update. It is available. Just update to the latest version of WordPress. So 6.5.5 is a short cycle release, with the next major release being version 6.6, scheduled for July the 16th, so a couple of weeks, which is supposed to bring significant improvements and new features. So if you're running WordPress, do your updates. Close some of this off. Staying with WordPress, critical WordPress plugin. This is on GB Hackers on Security. Mike said, had an interview today that mentioned on the job spec that I told him it makes me nervous. I see so many WordPress security issues. They told me it was managed by a third party. I was like, oh, thank God. We host a lot of sites for people in cloud, and even though they're managed by other people, it tends to be me reaching out before anybody else does, because we use the WP scan scripts to automatically scan websites. So it's usually me reaching out to them third parties saying, or reaching out to a client saying, you need to get hold of whoever's updating your WordPress site and tell them to update it, and that's quite a common occurrence. So this plugin exposes 90,000 plus WordPress sites. What's the plugin? Email subscribers by iScram Express. So it's email marketing, newsletters, and automation for WordPress and WooCommerce. And that's pretty bad. So CVE 2024-6172 has been assigned a CVSS score of 9.8. So if you run this plugin, you'll want to make sure it's updated. So according to the WordFence blog, so obviously it's been found by WordFence, the vulnerability affects all plugin versions up to and including 5.7.25. And it stems from insufficient escaping of user-supplied database parameters and inadequate preparation on the existing SQL query. So it's SQL injection, allowing unauthenticated, which is the important part. So if you're using this plugin, you need to go and update it right away. So this plugin is widely used for email marketing, newsletters, and automation. 90,000 plus installations. The vulnerability was discovered by Shaman 0x01, a researcher from the Shaman Red team with a track record of identifying critical security flaws. So check your WordPress is up to date and check that plugin is up to date. There was more WordPress crap to deal with. Can't find my mouse pointer between these three monitors. Where is it? I should have put these in order when I did the notes. So, latest hacker news. Patch these compromised WordPress plugins as soon as possible to avoid attacks. When I saw this, I assumed it was going to be that same plugin that we've just discussed, but it's not. Some of them are ones we mentioned last week. So the social warfare plugin, Blaze widget is now in, wrapper link element, contact form 7 multi-step add-on, and simply show hooks. So the infected plugins include what have we got? Update to latest version. So social warfare, you want to go to 4.4.7.3 Blaze widget, you need to be running at least 2.5.4. The wrapper link element, version 1.05. Contact Form 7, not Contact Form 7 itself, this is the multi-step add-on. You want to be running at least version 1.07. And Simply Hooks, none. Remove it, I guess. Right. May close that off. What was next in the news? So we've already mentioned Splunk. No, that's the regression one. What have we got next? But let's stay with Splunk. And multiple flaws have been found in Splunk Enterprise that lets attackers execute code. So Splunk is designed to search, analyze, and visualize machine-generated data. So similar to Greylog. The flaw discovered by both internal and external security researchers affects Splunk Enterprise versions 9.0.x, 9.1.x, and 9.2.x. So if you're running Splunk Enterprise, then you need to update immediately. So updates have been released. Amongst the most severe issues, unauthenticated users. It allows an authenticated user, so it's not unauthenticated. RCE. Low privileged user, remote code execution. So they're not unauthenticated, they are authenticated attacks. Don't know what that one is. And then we've got command line injection using external lookups. So again, authenticated. So they're all authenticated attacks, but obviously you need to update to 9.0.10, 9.1.5, 9.2.2, all later versions of them. So Splunk is very popular. It's got a very popular pricing. Comments as well. Cisco has hit the news. And a lot of these are like Cisco NXOS 0-day command injection vulnerabilities lets attackers gain root access. So a lot of these are obviously have the titles that they do to make you click on them and think, oh my god, what? But Cisco has disclosed a critical vulnerability in its widely used NXOS network operating system that could allow attackers to execute remote commands. Upgrade to patch versions as soon as possible. The vulnerability tracked as CVE 2024-20399 exists in the command line interface, CLI. So you need to be authenticated and logged into the switch. So an authenticated local attacker with admin credentials could exploit this flaw. If you've got a local attacker with admin credentials on your switch, it's not really going to matter whether they use this flaw or not, because they can change the config at will anyway. So this isn't a world is falling type scenario. They're being exploited in the wild as of April 2024. So we've got the MDS 9000 series switches and the Nexus 3000, 5500, 5600, 6000, 7000 and 9000 switches. There are some exceptions. Nexus 9000 series switches are unaffected on release 9.3 and later. I'll leave the links to this, but if you're running those switches, just update to latest firmware. But let's say if somebody's got admin access to your switch, they're logged in with full admin access, then they can erase the configs or do what they want anyway. TP-Link Armada. I've not played with TP-Link Armada myself, but it's like an alternative to, it's like a ripped off version of UniFi. So if you're familiar with UniFi switches and access points, Armada's TP-Link's offering of it. These vulnerabilities, if exploited, could allow attackers to execute remote code. So affected devices include wireless access points, routers, switches, VPN devices, and hardware controls for Armada software. 12 unique vulnerabilities were discovered and reported to the vendor following our responsible disclosure policy. So we can see there's a lot there. So if you're running any Armada-based stuff, you're going to want to update it to the latest versions, because obviously if you're just running Wi-Fi switches that anybody access points that anybody can access, say coffee shop for example, this could give you an issue. I've not dived into it too much because I don't really use it. Can't see how it's actually done. So TP-Link Device Debug Protocol, TDDP, is available on many devices and it's exposed for 15 minutes of a device's runtime. Okay. This service allows for remote servicing without manual activation. During this time, various functions on the device are exposed, which can be exploited by attackers. So yeah, if you're running any of this stuff, then you're going to want to update. I'm assuming there's information on this. So yeah, TP-Link has been notified and has released patches to address these issues. So users strongly advised to update their devices to the latest firmware. I keep meaning to have a look at the Armada stuff, but it means me buying it just to play with it. I might do some videos on it. If you've got a mobile phone and it's running Android, then you're going to want to do the July 2024 security update, which has patched various vulnerabilities. We can see there's various security bulletins that are about on this. So I'll leave these links, but you just need to go into your phone and check for updates. If it's set to automatic, you want to make sure you do a manual check as well. Is there anything I can pull out of that? So these vulnerabilities reside in the kernel, display, and an unidentified closed source component. And there's a list of vulnerabilities there. So just if you're running Android, update to the latest version. What have we got next? Printers. Everybody loves printers in the IT world. So the Toshiba multifunction printers are impacted by 40 plus vulnerabilities. So Toshiba eStudio, so specifically eStudio multifunction printers that are used by businesses. These vulnerabilities affect 103 different models of the Toshiba multifunction printers. We've got everything from remote code execution, privilege escalation, authentication credentials leak, DOM-based. So if you're running any Toshiba-based printers, check with Toshiba for the latest firmware versions and flash your printers. One thing a lot of folks forget is when you plug in printers onto your network, they need to be kept up to date as well. And there's a long ass list of printer models. Additionally, it was also mentioned that the physical security of the printers was not analysed, and the vulnerabilities have been confirmed in different models that run the latest firmware versions, such as the eStudio 2010 AC, the 3005 AC, the 3508A, and the 5018A. So these printers run Linux. So if you get access to Linux, then you can obviously use them to pivot around the network. Let me get a drink. So any Toshiba printer users, get them patched. Yeah. Juinper. So we've been with Cisco, now we're going with Juinper. So Juinper releases an out-of-cycle fix for max severity authentication bypass flaw. So if you're running any Juinper network stuff, then you're going to want to take a look at this. To address a maximum severity vulnerability that leads to authentication bypass in Session Smart Router, SSR, Session Smart Conductor, and WAN Assurance Router product. It's tracked as CVE 2024-2973. An attacker can exploit it to take full control of the device. Okay. Slight side note, only routers or conductors that are running in high availability redundant configurations are affected. So if you're running a single one, you'll want to update it anyway. And we've got the Session Smart Router and Conductor, so all versions before 5.6.15, from 6.0 before 6.1.9 LTS, and from 6.2 before 6.2.5. And the WAN Assurance Routers, 6.0 versions before 6.1.9, and 6.2 versions before 6.2.5. So you'll want to patch anyway, but it's going to be more of a concern to you if you're running multiple routers for high availability. Excuse me. Let's stay with routers and take a look at D-Link. So I'm sure I've mentioned these on a previous stream. The D-Link DIR 859 router flaw to steal passwords. This is an end-of-life one, if I recall correctly. Hackers are exploiting a critical vulnerability that affects all D-Link DIR 859 Wi-Fi routers to collect account information from the device, including passwords. The issue was disclosed in January, and it's tracked as CVE 2024-0769, and it's got a severity of 9.8, so that's pretty bad. And it's path traversal, so obviously you can cat the password files or whatever you want using path traversal. So yeah, if you're running these, you should probably look at using something else. So it's end of life and it no longer receives updates. The vendor's still released a security advisory explaining that the flaw exists. They've not fixed it, and it affects all firmware versions. So D-Link is not expected to release a fix for it. So yeah, throw it in the bin and find another router. What are we on next? Going with Gitlab. So we use Gitlab internally for development and stuff, but we don't expose it to the internet. It's only accessible internally or VPN. So this is in vulnerabilities affecting certain versions of Gitlab Community and Enterprise Edition, which could be exploited to run the pipelines as any user. So I'm guessing as root as well. So it's Gitlab. It's obviously similar to GitHub, but you can host it yourself. And it has a severity score of 9.6 out of 10. So if you under certain circumstances, which they've not defined what the circumstances are, an attacker could leverage it to trigger a pipeline as another user. So if you're running Gitlab, you'll want to run the update. If you've got it exposed to the internet, do you really need to have it exposed to the internet? Because GitLab does have a lot of issues. It's a very complicated piece of software. Not to use, but the code behind it itself. What we got next? Alarma AI platform lets attackers execute remote code. So I was actually considering doing a video on this because it's quite an interesting project. So what have we got? Remote code execution tracked to CVE 2024-37032. And they've aptly named it Problama. That's funny. Inalama, which is a popular open source project for AI model deployment with more than 70,000 GitHub stars, so it's obviously a popular project. Users are encouraged to update to Alama version 0.1.34 or later for their safety. Usually, if you're running these, you're not going to be exposed to the internet, so it's not an end of the world thing, but I think it's and it's generating code, you can manipulate it. So this was disclosed on May the 5th. On May the 5th, it was also acknowledged, the report. Alarma notified Wiz Research they'd committed to fix the GitHub on May the 5th. On May the 8th, a patch version was released, and then on 2024, they published a blog about the issue on June 24th. So that's an example of how you do proper disclosure of bugs and things. So if you're running that, you want to update to the latest version anyway. I think that's it for vulnerabilities. So if we go on to the next section we've got, which is like what people are doing, tactics, techniques, procedures, how people are trying to get onto your devices. This gets mentioned every week. So this is on GB Hackers. Hackers using Google Ads to deliver Poseidon Mac stealer. So, yep, I know everybody says Macs don't get malware, but they do. In fact, it's just as bad as PowerShell, to be honest, for executing commands if you can get somebody to run them. So this was discovered on June the 24th by Malwarebytes researcher. Identified another Mac-specific stealer campaign named Poseidon. And it uses Google malicious ads. So when you're searching anything on Google, and I've said this a million times, use a password manager, store the links to the actual official sites. So you can see an example here. It's Arc browser. Downloading this and running it will give you a problem. And install Info Stealer for OS X. Staying with fake websites. So, the fake IT support site push malware PowerShell scripts as Windows fixes. So, even if you're running a Mac, you shouldn't really be downloading crap from the internet and running it on a command line, because it's just as bad as, say, using PowerShell. So, fake IT support sites promote malicious PowerShell fixes. We all do it. If you get an error on your machine, Windows error, you Google it. So this is a common one. So you Google that specific error, and then the fake website is obviously getting you to download malicious code. And they're even creating fake videos for millions of users who have been dealing with this since January. So during the actual issue it is, in January 2024, Microsoft Patch Tuesday released security updates to fix a BitLocker encryption bypass flaw, which is tracked as CVE 2024-2066, which relates specifically to this error number, where you get the error install failure. And I've seen these myself, and people are like Googling fixes for them and just running scripts off random websites that are actually fake and not very helpful at all. So just be very careful with that, and we can see it there. Fix guides, and we've got the fix for Windows update error for Windows 10, Windows 11, KB 503441, and this is exactly the type of the fake sites that are being promoted on YouTube. And then what you get is something like this. So you copy that, you paste it in, and your machine gets infected. So you should be very, very careful of where you're actually downloading, copying and pasting crap from on the internet. We've got a inner setup malware posing as a Microsoft Office crack to evade detection. Yeah, I'm not even going into that. If you're downloading cracks for pirated software, then I suppose you deserve to get it. More fake software. Telegram users beware SpyMax remote access Trojan attacking to steal sensitive data. And this is obviously like this stupid website named Here, which is not actually Telegram. And then you've got click to download, and you just downloading an Android APK file, which installs malicious stuff onto your phone. So you don't want to be doing that. We've got a Google Chrome plugin. So translate text. I'm assuming it's for translating text extension from North Korean hackers. What this is doing is they can gather personal data, so it's just saying can, so I'm assuming they've not actually ripped it apart. Display pop-ups, change URLs, and manipulate the browser after loading them. Sensitive data, such as email address credentials and browser credential screenshots, were stolen using this Google Chrome extension. So if you have been running it, you're going to have an issue. Obviously, remove it. Change any passwords or any websites you've ever logged into, but it's taking screenshots and shit as well. So this one's on Cybersecurity News. Hackers attacking users with Apple IDs via malicious SMS. So if you get any SMS messages asking for your Apple ID and things like that, obviously delete them, report them as junk. So verify the source. If you get everyone asking for Apple IDs, just don't do it. Don't click links in them. Enable two-factor authentication. That's just general advice. This one's on BBC News. So Booking.com warns of up to 900% increase in travel scams. So Booking.com is warning AI is driving an explosion in travel scams. Internet safety boss Marnie Wilkins said there's been anywhere from a 500 to a 900% increase in the past year and a half. So these are phishing emails, and people using generative AI tools like ChatGPT to create the wording and things. I suppose AI makes it easier to write the emails, but obviously you can write them without using AI. So you get phishing emails that are targeting Booking.com, Airbnb, just because they allow people to list their own places to stay. After someone pays up, the scammer either vanish without a trace, or leave the buyer without a place to stay, or even scam them out of more money. So just be aware of anything like that, as usual. Let's take a look at some breaches. TeamViewer. Pretty sure that this is on GB Hackers on Security again. TeamViewer confirms that Russian actors behind the recent hack. So if you've not heard, yes, TeamViewer's internal systems were compromised. So it's remote access software. Just they're saying that customer-facing systems have not, and the actual TeamViewer software itself hasn't been breached, but you know, take that with a pinch of salt and keep your eye on it. So this was detected on the 26th of June 2024. So TeamViewer has emphasised that the breach was contained within its corporate IT environment. That's not scary at all, is it? And did not extend to its product environment or platform or any customer data. Max saying TeamViewer has been hacked a few times. They have. We moved away from TeamViewer quite a few years ago. But yeah, they have been hacked more than once. It's very popular, and I still know a lot of companies that use it. But they're saying it's not in its product environment, so it's not actually TeamViewer itself, but their internal systems. What information was collected from there? So TeamViewer has reiterated its commitment to transparency and security. Security is of the utmost importance for us. It's deeply rooted in our DNA. So they are working to see what happened. I'll leave the links to this. So they've been working with NCC Group. That's interesting. So Matt Hull, Global Head of Threat Intelligence at NCC Group, recommends removing TeamViewer software as a precaution until more details about the compromise are known. Yeah, when we moved away from it, obviously we just used the remote management software to remove any instances of TeamViewer off clients' machines. And then obviously make sure you remove any links to address book links that are in TeamViewer to access machines and things, and close the account down. It's probably the best way to do it. But if the head of threat intelligence at the NCC Group is recommending removing TeamViewer, then that's pretty significant. You might have seen all over the news that Lockbit stolen data from the US Federal Reserve. Apparently they lied and it's not true. They're just trying to get back a bit of obviously with what's happened, they're just trying to claim back some. So the recently disrupted Lockbit ransomware group, in a desperate attempt to make a comeback, claimed that this week that it had hit the Federal Reserve, and it turns out that that was the data is from a bank, not the Federal Reserve. Damn, I wanted that one to be real. Yeah, I brought this up last week, didn't I, on last week's stream. This was the 33 terabytes of America's banking secrets, claimed on Lockbit site. Turns out it wasn't. Yeah, it was, because I remember reading this same article, actually. Did it say which bank it is? So they've apparently breached the American bank Evolve Bank and Trust. So Evolve Bank and Trust, cyber threat monitoring company. Hackmanic posted an update on social media. So yeah, it's just not true. It was a bank that they hit. Certainly not the Federal Reserve. And then there's interestingly, recently the Federal Reserve had penalised Evolve Bank and Trust over multiple deficiencies identified in how the bank conducted risk management, anti-money laundering and compliance practices. Examinations conducted in 2023 found that this bank had engaged in unsafe and unsound banking practices by failing to have in place an effective risk management framework for those partnerships. So as a result, the Federal Reserve demanded that they Evolve halt some of its activities until the bank improves its risk management. So is it surprising that they've been hit? It doesn't sound like it. What else we got? Microsoft was breached, and they've been alerting more users. So this is back to the breach that followed on from the 12th of January in 2024. That attack, I don't know if I was doing this podcast. I wasn't, actually, because it's Get me JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, and Jeffrey Epstein's banker. So the attack, which targeted Microsoft corporate email systems, prompted an immediate response from the company. And yeah, Microsoft are still being attacked, and people are still trying to use the Midnight Blizzard, are still trying to use information that is extracted from Microsoft to hack them. So Microsoft will continue to share updates on its ongoing investigation. What else we got? Prudential financial hack, 2.5 million individuals impacted. So obviously, Prudential Financial, a leading financial services company, has reported a data breach. This was from the 4th of February 2024. Was discovered the following day and has since raised serious concerns about data security within the financial sector. The Prudential Insurance Company of America, headquartered at whatever, confirmed the breach on the 29th of March. The breach involved an external system hack compromising the sensitive personal information of millions of individuals, including 21,877 residents of Maine. So it was an external breach, obviously, from hackers gained access to the systems. Names and other personal identifiers. I'll leave the links to that so you can read more about it. We've got Affirm. It says cardholders impacted by evolved bank data breach. Oh, this is the one we've just covered, isn't it? So buy now, pay later loan company Affirm is warning that holders of its payment cards had their personal information exposed due to a data breach at its third-party issuer, which was this Evolve Bank and Trust. Evolve, the one that we just mentioned, Lockbit. So as we just mentioned, the Lockbit said they stole data from the Federal Reserve, 33 terabytes of it. But it turns out it wasn't. It was this bank. So that's just to confirm it. This is covered on Bleeping Computer. NHS here in the UK. Stolen test data and NHS numbers published by hospital hackers. And this is covered under BBC News. A gang of cybercriminals causing huge disruption to multiple London hospitals was published sensitive patient data stolen from an NHS pathology testing provider. Overnight on Thursday, Quilling shared almost 400 gigabyte of private information on their darknet site. That's a lot. They've been trying to extort money from the NHS provider Synovis. They're the ones that we covered last week, or the week before. Since hacked the firm on the 3rd of June. Cybersecurity expert Kieran Martin told the BBC it was one of the most significant and harmful cyber attacks ever in the UK. Sample data seen by the BBC includes patient names, date of birth, NHS numbers, descriptions of blood tests. It's not known if test results are also in the data. So the hackers resulted in more than 3,000 hospital and GP appointments and operations being resulted. A teenager being treated for cancer is among those affected. Right. I can't remember if I covered this recently. So Microsoft introduced a patch. This one. KB, let me grab the beginning of that. So Windows 11 KB 5039302. After finding that it causes some devices to restart repeatedly. So I've experienced this a few times. This article, I'll leave the links in the description, but this article basically goes through what happens. And I have to do this a lot with Windows updates, funny enough. So after a few failed reboots, I just keep That was helpful. Well done, Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft have had the many Windows updates cause issues like this. So you can just keep powering the device on, pulling the power, doing whatever you need to do, and eventually after a few failed boots, you'll get this. And then you need to go into troubleshooting, and the advanced section allows you to remove the latest update. And if you install it, you'll find that Windows should boot back in if you install the latest update. In fact, the instructions are here. So when you're at the above screen, click on Troubleshoot, then Advanced Options, and then Uninstall Updates, and finally click on the Uninstall Latest Quality Update. You'll get prompted if you want to do it. Hit yeah, and then that's something you should get used to doing, because it's like we look after a lot of computers and we do this a lot. Thankfully, we're coming towards the end of these. This is Schneier on security. The US is banning Kaspersky, if you've not heard this yet. This has been a long time coming. I think it dates back to 2018 or something. But the Biden administration on Thursday said it's banning the company from selling its products to new US-based customers starting on July the 20th. So the company is only allowed to provide software updates to existing customers through to the 29th of September. Kaspersky is actually a really good company. Yeah, they are. They've been involved in a lot of uncovering a lot of cybersecurity incidents and sharing that information. The recent one was it the iPhone? Someone had discovered that their iPhone had been hacked, and like they started digging into it and just releasing all the information that they had on it. So they're no longer able to sell the products to US customers starting on July the 20th. They'll be able to provide software updates until September the 29th. The first such action under authorities given to the Commerce Department in 2019, follows years of warnings from US intelligence community about Kaspersky being a national security threat because Moscow could allegedly commandeer its all-seeing antivirus software to spy on its customers. Again, I'll leave the links to this. This is, yeah. It's political in nature and really serves no practical purpose. Again, I'll leave the full links to this, but it's quite... There's a lot of comments regarding this, and it's quite an interesting read. So I'll leave the links to that. But yeah, I agree completely with you on that they are a really good company. And they have done a lot for the cybersecurity community and unveiling information. The last thing I was going to mention is this. So again, we're looking at Bleeping Computer, and Proton launches free privacy-focused Google Docs alternative. You grab a drink. So obviously you're going to be familiar with what Google Docs are. You're probably familiar with Proton. They offer the secure mail service, but they've launched its Docs in Proton Drive, a free and open source and end-to-end encrypted web-based document editing and collaboration tool. I've not looked at it at all. So Proton's a Swiss company renowned for its privacy-focused services, including Proton VPN, Proton Mail, Proton Pass, Proton Drive, and now also Proton Docs. So that's recently been announced. So we've got end-to-end encryption to protect all keystrokes and cursor movement in real time. Does not harvest or share any user data with third parties. Secure, speedy image embedding into documents. There's a free tier with no feature barriers for up to 5 gigabytes of storage. Now it's open source and independently audited for transparency and verification. So this is quite an interesting product release for them. Fully supports rich text editing. So we've got support for Markdown as well, code blocks and checklists. Seamless integration with multiple formats, including proprietary formats like Microsoft DocX. And you can do real-time collaboration features like comments, presence indicators, and unique cursors. So this is a screenshot we can see of it here. So collaborators can be invited without restrictions, but they do need a Proton account to participate to ensure everyone has the same security. Obviously, it's end-to-end encrypted, so they will need a Proton account. We can see an example of the Google Docs alternative here. So that could be interesting for you. With that, I think that brings me to the end of things to talk about over the last week. There's been a lot in the news, and I was like, some of it weren't even worth mentioning because some of the articles that was in the news have been patched by Microsoft or other companies even like 2 years ago. Something I read that's just come up was patched in 2021, and people just like to scare people. Some of these news sites, obviously, they need to title of documents to make people click on them. So we've done everything on there. Covered everything there. Right, so I'm done. Thank you to those that have joined me again. I really appreciate that you come on and have a chat with me. So thank you very much for that. So when this is done, obviously it'll stay listed live. I'm going to log into I'll edit the description and put the link to the forum post with all these links on it where you can read them and check them out for yourself. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Richard. It's been a pleasure again. Thanks. See you next week. You will. Thank you, both of you.